Shine Campus, happy holidays. I hope everybody's doing well. Imagine everybody's trying to spend time with their family. I was going to do a recording, but I have time to sneak away for a few minutes and get you some information. And so here we are. How to change a toxic relationship. And I think during the holidays, um, especially when we're trying to spend time with our family and do the things that mean goodness and happiness, it becomes a whole lot more apparent that um, we're having a hard time in our relationship, or that the relationship is full of negativity, creates badness in our hearts and our minds, and gets us to focus on some of the hardest things that are going on in our world, instead of being able to enjoy our family and have that kind of focus. So how do we change a toxic relationship? And the first thing that we're going to say as a step one is how to think about it. And so the way to think about it is not to be focused on changing another person in your relationship, instead to create a different kind of vibe about your relationship that gives you a chance to have something different, right? So what is a toxic relationship? Well, a toxic relationship has different kinds of characteristics, and yours might be something like the way that you guys talk to each other. It might be the expectations that you're leaning on each other about. Either way, what's going on is that we're using our fears or our anxiousness to try to manage and create different things in our relationship. And so they come out as insults and hurtful things and hurtful interactions towards each other. And as that's going on, yeah, we start feeling that same. If somebody's anxious about a scenario, we start feeling anxious, right? If somebody is worried about having to go around family and not be in that scenario, we start feeling that too. And so um, it just kind of feeds into each other. And again, this is one of the more it makes it a whole lot more salient that exists in our relationship. All right, so the first thing you have to think about is I can't go to the other person to really get this to change. I have to start with myself. And so, what do we start with? Well, a lot of people um, think, well, if I do certain things, like if I try to somehow say things a certain way, it doesn't matter. This person is still toxic, and it won't fix things. And I will say to you, actually, if we can do the loving thing, meaning if you could focus on being in a place of, look, I want to build our relationship up. And so I'm going to provide a sense of security in the things that I talk about. And I also want my person to be okay. And if I want my person to be okay, I want to let them know that not only do I want us to be together, but I'm doing the things that I have to do so that we can get to a different space as well. And if we're not approaching that person with negativity and hardship and insults, then everything starts to change. Because what happens in a toxic relationship is a lot of times we're doing this kind of move where we're boxing and keeping our forearms up, and as that's happening emotionally, that's what starts going and being reciprocated. So if we can put those things down and start reaching out to give hugs and working on how to get to that point, and figuratively speaking, because we're not talking about violent relationships, but if we can get to this idea of being in a place in our mind where we're thinking, how do I support the person that I am wanting to be in relationship with? How do I create that kind of environment? Then everything starts changing. And so your belief is necessary, right? So the first thing was, let's start thinking about, it's not going to be on the other person for us to change the toxic relationship. The second thing is, my belief has to be in the idea that love can prevail overall, right? That love can change the scenario that I'm in. What's the timeline on it changing? We don't really know the timeline on it changing. We don't need that though. We just need to be able to trust in it. All right. And then as that happens, we start installing little scenarios. And you can make a list of what will work in your relationship, but little scenarios that either create supportive interaction or create security in your relationship, right? And so as you do supportive interaction and security in your relationship, so what would that look like? Well, part of the thing that creates the toxicity is the idea that somebody doesn't feel secure in the relationship for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be something that you're doing, it could be something that they came from. So if you can um, have something on your list that says, look, every day I'm going to let this person know that, hey, we're together and we're going to make it no matter what. And I appreciate everything that you're doing to get through the things that you need to get through. Right. So you're going to put something like those kinds of practices on your list um, of to dos, and then you start installing those, because the more you start installing those kinds of things, the ratio of negativity goes down. So in toxic relationships, it's usually I'm going to comment on the hardest thing that you do, you're going to comment on the things I do. We're probably not going to even end up talking about the underlying pieces. Instead, we're just going to talk about all the bad things that we do in our relationship, right? So if we can change that around and we can start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do to build this relationship up? Then we start getting to a different place in our relationship and everything starts to change. So how do I know, or how can I get somebody else on board? And I really want you guys to think about throwing that out of your mind, because if you are interacting based on trying to get somebody else to do something, if you say, look, I need to do this so that they can smile, or so they can start cooperating, or so they can reciprocate it, if you interact that way, that's going to take out some of the real that you're doing in a relationship that means bring you together, right? And so in your mind, you can't have that as an operating mode. Okay. So the final thing that I think will be super helpful is being able to connect on a deeper level. So one thing about toxic relationships that people really don't talk about is that toxic relationships are only about surface level things, right? And we'll try to connect it to things that aren't underneath. Like for instance, somebody might say, "You're looking at another person because you don't care about me," right? And that's really a surface level conversation, um, because one is what I didn't say about that scenario is I'm insecure, and there's a reason I feel insecure. It's because of all the things that I've been through in my other relationships, and I'm trying to place that on you right now. And then the other person said, what the other person's experiencing might be something like, man, actually I'm super conscious about what's going on whenever you're here because I'm nervous about how you might respond. So we have all these underlying things that are going on that we never really talk about. You won't um, you won't continue a toxic relationship if you're able to connect around some of the things that are going on underneath, and you're able to share at that level. So that's actually a huge key for us to undo it, is be more connected on a real level versus a superficial level, right? And so if you're on a superficial level and it happens by accident, just because we don't even know how to connect, we don't know what we're feeling, we're not paying attention. A lot of times we don't know what's going on underneath, so we don't even go there. Then if we're able to switch that over, then it's going to help us with that toxic relationship. I would say the last thing, or the final scenario, is when we do all of these things, um, along with not expecting that our partner is reciprocating or doing what they're supposed to be doing. Um, when somebody does do it, make sure you take care of each other around that scenario. So if I get vulnerable and I'm able to share some of the underlying stuff, and you don't support that, or you somehow smash it or don't do goodness with it, then it's going to make it that much harder for each of us to share. Because one is, if I smash that, I don't trust that you won't do the same thing to me. But either way, for each person in the relationship, it makes it really difficult to share. Okay. So there's a lot of information in there. You guys can go back and rewind it. That's a cool thing about it. But the idea here is, can we switch things over in our mind, how we're doing things, and not put the other responsibility on the other person, and then can we move forward with trying to do it differently and having a different kind of focus? All right, you guys, enjoy your holiday, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.